Enzo.
I'm Historian 3 and Narrator 2.
I'm Berto. I'm Historian 1.
I'm Phoebe. I'm George and Narrator 1.
I'm Aunt Daisy.
I'm Narrator 3.
I'm Historian 2.
It was April 14th, 1912, and the Titanic had been at sea for 4 days. It was almost through its first sea voyage from Southampton, England to New York City.
The Titanic was the most elegant ship ever built. And the safest, too. The Titanic's designer said it was unsinkable. George, Phoebe, and Aunt Daisy are traveling in first class back to New York after an adventure in London.
Georgie, don't you want to come for tea?
I've seen enough fancy ladies and millionaires. I'm heading out to explore.
George, you must have seen every inch of this ship by now.
Yesterday I found some escaped ladders in the crew's dining hall.
What were you doing in the cruise? Actually, forget I asked. Enjoy your adventures. Don't be late for dinner.
George sets off to prowl the enormous ship. He discovers the engine rooms and the first-class swimming pool. Soon he finds himself on third-class deck. A little boy comes up to him.
Enzo!
George.
Giorgio! The kid has the loudest voice George has ever heard. You're Enzo's first American friend. We're from Italy, but soon we'll be American.
George and Marco talk for 2 hours until George notices how late he is. He jumps up.
No go, Giorgio!
Sorry, I hope we'll see each other again.
Something tells you we will.
I'm Mr. Steve.
I'm Aunt Daisy. I'm Phoebe.
Georgie, I thought you'd been snatched from the deck by a sea monster.
Don't worry, Aunt Daisy. From now on, I won't let George out of my sight. George is devouring his fourth dessert when a man comes over to their table.
Mr. Steve.
Hello. Why it seems everyone important is on the voice. I hear there's even an Egyptian princess on board.
Oh, ooh, I have to meet her.
She's traveling in first-class baggage. She's more than 2,500 years old.
Pardon me.
She's a mummy. Belongs to a man named Mr. Burrow. He dug her up in Egypt. People are saying he sold the coffin and then packed the princess in a wooden crate.
But isn't it bad luck to take a mummy from its tomb? I hope our ship isn't doomed.
Not to worry. Nothing can hurt the Titanic, dear. Not even a curse.
Don't even think about trying to see that mummy.
I'm Narrator 3. I'm Narrator 1. I'm Narrator 2.
I'm George.
I'm Henry Historian 1 and 2.
I'm Aunt Daisy.
But George can't resist. The minute Aunt Phoebe and Daisy are asleep, later that night he quietly sneaks out of his suite. He heads down 5 flights and easily finds the first-class baggage room. Thanks to his previous wanderings, the crate with Mr. Barrow's name on it is in the corner. Carefully, he tries to pry off the lid. But then he hears a low rumbling noise and the floor begins to shake. The ship has hit an iceberg. Water poured through gases in the side of the ship. Few people realize the ship has been aircraftly boarded. George is spooked and rushes from the room without seeing what's in the crate. Meanwhile, Aunt Daisy is fast asleep. All is quiet in first class. But George barely gets back to his cabin and into his bed when there's a loud knock on the door. Hello, hello?
It's after midnight, Henry.
Spoke to an iceberg, ma'am. The captain wants everyone out on deck.
Is this some kind of joke?
Do hurry, you'll need your life vest. Henry leaves, and Aunt Daisy flings open Phoebe's bed curtains. The bed is empty.
George, where is your sister?
A chill comes over George as he remembers what Phoebe promised at dinner that she wouldn't let him out of her sight. He realizes that Phoebe must have woken up when he left and that she had gone to the baggage hold looking for him.
Aunt Daisy, I'm sorry, but I think I know exactly where Phoebe went. George.
I'm Officer 2.
I'm Narrator 2.
I'm Enzo. I'm Historian 3. I'm Aunt Daisy.
I'm Historian 2.
I'm Phoebe.
I'm narrator 3.
I'm Narrator 1 and Officer.
I'm Marco.
I'm Historian 1.
George leads Aunt Daisy down 4 flights of stairs to Regina.
A crowd of panicked third-class passengers were in the hallway, desperate to get to the upper decks. These people knew something was wrong with the ship. Many woke up to find their room flooding with sea water.
We'll never find Phoebe in this crowd.
Giorgio!
It's Enzo and Marco. George, who is this boy?
Be a friend of Giorgio. Marco, I can't find my sister.
Marco leans over and whispers something to Enzo. The boy nods.
Phoebe! Phoebe!
His voice booms through the crowd.
Phoebe staggers forward.
Thank goodness I found you.
George decides not to argue over who found who.
The ship groaned as it made for the people fell like dominoes.
The stairs to the upper decks were blocked by locked gates. And the ship did not have nearly enough lifeboats for everyone on board.
First-class passengers were loaded onto the lifeboats, but third-class passengers were forced to wait.
But we must find another way up.
It's up to you, George. You know the ship better than anyone.
George closes his eyes, trying to remember the hidden passageways he discovered on his adventures.
This way.
They hurry down the hall, splashing through water that is rising quickly. George pulls them into the crew's dining room where he remembers seeing a ladder leading up 2 decks. It's right where he thought it would be.
They scrambled up and through a maze of hallways to a padlock.
There's a lifeboat about to leave. The lady and children must come at once. Sorry, Sue. Women and children only.
Marco speaks quietly to Enzo, then hands the boy to George.
We will watch out for him. I promise you that. George, Phoebe, and Aunt Daisy fight tears as they leave Marco in the crowd.
The officer helps Phoebe, Enzo, and Aunt Daisy into the boat. But when George tries to follow, the officer blocks his way.
Women and children only, sir. No room for you. Lower away.
No, wait, he's only a boy. He needs to come with us. Aunt Daisy and Phoebe both stand up. Passengers scream as the lifeboat rocks, and Phoebe almost falls into the water. Sit down, or I'll throw you off.
George stands in shock as the lifeboat is lowered into the dark sea.
I'm narrator 1.
I'm narrator 2.
I'm historian 2. I'm George.
I'm narrator 3. I'm Marco. I'm historian 3.
I'm historian 1.
The Titanic spell is completely underwater. Water washed over the deck.
George is frozen in fear until he feels a hand on his shoulder.
Giorgio, there's no other choice. We must get off this ship.
Marco pulls George to the rail. They both climb over and clasp hands.
They leap into the freezing water. Marco grabs a door floating by. He helps George climb on top of it. Then he finds a small crate to keep himself afloat.
Swimming with all his might, Marco pulls George away from the wreckage.
George sees the Titanic in the distance, its lights flickering up, black smoke pouring out of the smokestack.
There was a big explosion before the ship disappeared into the water, bringing many trapped passengers along with it.
Marco is so exhausted that he closes his eyes and barely moves. The water is 30 degrees too cold for a human to survive for long.
Hundreds of screaming people cling to bits of wreckage. George is almost out of hope when he hears voices behind him.
It's a lifeboat just 20 yards away. Marco, wake up! Marco doesn't move, and George realizes that it's up to him.
He pulls Marco through the water, which is so cold it burns his skin.
He reaches the boat, but nobody helps him climb inside.
There's no room.
You have to help us.
George pulls Marco around to the other side of the boat. He hoists himself up and tumbles over some exhausted and frightened survivors. Marco is in bad shape, but George manages to pull him into the boat too.
They float in silence in the icy sea.
I am narrator 2.
I'm Enzo.
I'm historian too.
I'm narrator 1.
I'm Ann.
I'm George. I'm narrator 3.
I'm historian 1.
I'm Marco.
I'm historian 3.
George comes close to Marco, trying to keep him warm. Marco barely breathes, but then
Look there, is that a ship?
The ocean liner Carpathia had heard Titanic's distress call before it sank.
Marco, it's a ship. Marco. The ship has already picked up hundreds of Titanic survivors from lifeboats. Many of the rescuees are lined up at the rails, waving and shouting at Julia's boat.
One voice rises up over the others.
Papa, Papa, Giorgio!
Enzo.
They're safe, Marco, and so are we.
Tragically, of approximately 2,200 people on board, only about 700 survived.
For decades after the sinking, there was a rumor that there was a mummy on board and that it cursed the ship.
But it was not a curse that doomed the Titanic. It was an iceberg and the false belief that the ship was unsinkable.